I ride over my beautiful ranch. Between my legs is a beautiful horse. The air is wine. The grapes on a score of rolling hills are red with autumn flame. Across Sonoma Mountain, wisps of sea fog are stealing. The afternoon sun smolders in the drowsy sky. I have everything to make me glad I'm alive.
Born into poverty in San Francisco in 1876 and raised on the Oakland waterfront, Jack London first came to the Valley of the Moon in 1903. Already a world-famous writer and adventurer at the age of 27, he was seeking to escape from the stress and strain of city life.
All I wanted was a quiet place in the country to write and loaf in, and get out of nature. That's something which we all need, only most of us don't know it.
But Jack's mind was far too active to let him loaf for long. In the summer of 1905, he moved to Glen Ellen in the Sonoma Valley and soon threw himself into his newly purchased Sonoma Mountain Farm with all his energy and financial resources.
This is to be no summer residence proposition, but a home all the year round. I'm anchoring good and solid, and anchoring for keeps.
Jack named what was to become a 1,400-acre spread the Beauty Ranch and considered it his home. Jack's roots, however, were still partly anchored in Oakland and the Bay Area. In 1905, he was divorced from his first wife, Bessie Madron, and made routine trips to Oakland to visit his daughters, Joan and Becky. Although childless by his second wife, Charmian Kittredge, Jack considered her his mate for life. Charmian shared his enthusiasm for country living, as well as his wanderlust and the thrill of more adventurous surroundings. In 1907, she served as first mate aboard the Snark, the ketch the Londons built for what they intended to be a leisurely 7-year voyage around the world. Bad luck and severe illness cut short the cruise, sending the Londons home from Australia after only 27 months. Back at the ranch, Jack added more parcels of land and made plans for a wolf house. His enthusiasm for farming and the ranch never diminished.
I am the sailor on horseback. Watch my dust. Oh, I shall make mistakes so many, but watch my dream come true. Try to dream with me my dreams of fruitful acres.
He planted fruit, grain, and vegetable crops, raised fine horses, pigs, cattle, and other animals as breeding stock, and developed new agricultural techniques. Jack was a celebrity, a colorful, controversial personality who was often in the news. He was a fiery and eloquent public speaker and much sought after as a lecturer on socialism and other economic and political topics. Between 1900 and 1916, he completed over 50 books, including both fiction and nonfiction, hundreds of short stories, and numerous articles on a wide range of topics. Jack London died on his Beauty Ranch, November 22, 1916.
Jack laid his hand upon the hills of California with the biggest writing of all his writing and imagination and wisdom. Just don't let all who listen and read and run forget Jack London's biggest dream.
The cottage was the Londons' home between 1911 and 1916. This is where Jack wrote many of his later stories and novels, designed plans for Beauty Ranch, and along with Charmian, entertained their many guests. Jack patched together Beauty Ranch. Over several years, he bought worn-out farmlands and a former winery complex from adjoining property owners. One of the first things he did was build a carriage house on the 1906 earthquake-damaged winery foundation across from the cottage. This also served as guest rooms and quarters for the ranch hands. The Londons found the simple 1860s wood-framed cottage a convenient residence while they were building their massive stone and timber wolf house, which was intended to be their dream house. After fire destroyed their nearly completed wolf house in 1913, the cottage proved too small for them. They were never able to unpack the hundreds of objects they collected on their extensive travels, or the thousands of books they accumulated for their personal library. Jack redoubled his efforts on making the farm more productive. Resigned to staying in the cottage a bit longer, Jack made it more comfortable by enclosing the front porches. One became Jack's sleeping porch, and the other a sun porch for Charmian. A window seat was added in Charmian's bedroom. Jack also expanded his study by building an extension on the side of the cottage. Because Jack's work habits included staying up late every night, reading, chain smoking, and making notes, Charmian kept separate sleeping quarters. Her bedroom and dressing room were located directly across the hallway from Jack's study and sleeping porch. The Londons were not to be disturbed in the mornings. So, while Jack was writing his 1,000 words a day, their guests were being served breakfast by the London servants in the adjacent stone building. This old winery building served as the London's dining room and kitchen. An outhouse and separate laundry room were just outside. Later in the day, Jack and Charmian would join their guests for a midday meal, followed by an afternoon of activities on the ranch. The evening was spent in spirited conversation as they shared food, drink, and music in the dining room. The cottage is where Jack, at the age of 40, died on November 22, 1916. Up to his last day, he still had bold plans and boundless enthusiasm for the future. The seemingly simple notion of farming, in London's ever-expanding concept of it, encompassed a visionary return to the soil.
I go into farming because my philosophy and research have taught me to recognize the fact that a return to the soil is the basis of economics. I see my farm in terms of the world, and I see the world in terms of my farm.
Hillside lands had been worked out and destroyed by pioneer farmers who had preceded Jack into the valley. The key to Jack's effort to reclaim the land was in the use of natural fertilizers and hillside terracing techniques.
I believe the soil is our one indestructible asset, and by green manures, nitrogen-gathering cover crops, proper tillage and draining, I'm getting results which the Chinese have demonstrated for 40 centuries.
An elaborate tile drainage system and the terracing of slopes helped restore that worn-out hillside land. Some of those original terraces are still in use today, as part of the vineyard belonging to the Trust of Irving Shepherd. About a mile up in the hills above the cottage, Jack built a curving stone dam. Still faithfully holding back water today, the dam served a utilitarian purpose in Jack's scheme of things.
My first big dam on the place is just finished, so that on these poor, old, worked-out, eroded hillsides, I shall be able to harvest 2 crops a year and turn 1 crop under.
By placing a drain pipe inside the reservoir, irrigation water could be diverted to the fields below. Building the dam also created a beautiful 5-acre lake. It was here that Jack had his ever-busy ranch hands construct a redwood log bathhouse. The lake was a favorite spot for the Londons and their many guests after riding the Beauty Ranch trails. Jack used the old Kohler and Froling buildings for stables and equipment storage. He bought a blacksmith shop in Glen Ellen and installed the equipment into the cooperage building, which has now fallen into ruins. Next door was the distillery, which still stands today. He had the sherry barn converted into a stable. Originally, this barn was constructed in 1884 by Chinese laborers. Next to the sherry barn, Jack's Italian stonemasons built the stallion barn for his prize purebred Shire horses. Note the contrast in construction techniques between the Italian-built stallion barn, with protruding stones in the walls, and the Chinese style of the sherry barn, with stones flush with the wall. Between the barns, Jack built a manure pit to store fertilizer for later distribution in the fields. Although the name Pig Palace is something of a joke, the idea was not to make royalty of the Duroc Jersey pigs housed in the elaborate structure. It was to be sensitive to their needs in hopes of improving the breed stock.
I have just completed a pig pen that'll make anyone in the United States who is interested in the manufacture of pork sit up and take notice.
This unique piggery was designed by Jack and built in 1915. The circular design had a central feed tower to save labor and was surrounded by 17 pens. Each family of pigs had its own front porch, feed trough, piped-in drinking water, and back exit to a fenced exercise yard. Concrete floors allowed for a cleaner environment. Cholera had been afflicting neighboring farmers' hogs, and London hoped to combat this problem by enforcing a rigid code of hygiene.
There is nothing like it in the way of piggeries ever built.
The Pig Palace drew wide attention for its unique design and efficiency. The first hollow cement block silos in California were created by Jack's artful craftsmen in 1912.
As usual, I'm plugging away, head over heels with the ranch. I'm building, constructing, and making the dead soil live again. My first silo is a success, and I'm building 2 more silos this winter.
Even though Jack had plans for building several silos, he only built 2. They stand over 40 feet tall, and as many of the structures built by London's workers remain as monuments to their maker's dream of fruitful acres.
My house will be standing, act of God permitting, for 1,000 years.
Without a doubt, the most impressive of Jack London's ranch projects was the construction of Wolf House. Sadly, the finished house was not to get a chance to outlast even its creator. In late August of 1913, just a few weeks before Jack and Charmian were to move in, the house was ruined by fire, gutting the house and leaving only the rock walls and chimneys. Today, these ruins protrude majestically into the California sky, a sight that is not easy to forget. Wolf House was Jack and Charmian's dream house.
I am building my dream house on my dream ranch. The latter is already mine. The former I am starting to build.
Albert Farr, a well-known San Francisco architect, was employed to sketch Jack and Charmian's ideas for their house and supervise its construction. The 4-story, 26-roomed house contained 15,000 square feet of floor space, 9 fireplaces, and a long reflection pool in the courtyard. The upper 2 floors were to be for Jack and Charmian, and the lower floor and basement for entertaining their guests. They selected native building materials that blended in with the surroundings: maroon-colored volcanic rock and unpeeled redwood timbers, and under them poured a massive concrete foundation, all in an attempt to build an ancestral home that would withstand earthquake, fire, flood, or any other disaster.
Everyone agreed that rock and concrete, massive beams, and redwood logs with the bark on were practically fireproof. Nevertheless, on August 22nd, the entire inflammable part of the high stone shell was destroyed.
There were many rumors about the cause of the fire. In 1995, a group of forensic experts visited the site and concluded that the fire was the result of spontaneous combustion. Workers wiping down the wood interior had left linseed oil-soaked rags in the building. From all outward appearances, Jack handled the tragedy philosophically and got back to work. But the destruction of Wolf House left him terribly depressed. It is said that he never got over it.
On the night of the fire, Jack told me, "It isn't the money loss, though that is grave enough just at this time. The main hurt comes from the wanton despoiling of so much beauty."
Although the intention was there, Jack never got a chance to rebuild. The ruins stand in silent testimony to the grand scale of his and Charmian's dream for their ranch home. A unique and fascinating, but shattered dream. Three years after the burning of Wolf House, on November 22, 1916, Jack London died of kidney failure at the age of 40. Surrounded by an old picket fence, Jack's grave lies at the top of a knoll, not far from the ruins of Wolf House. He had expressed his desire for this site, close to the graves of 2 pioneer children, and for his ashes to be laid to rest under a lava rock from the Wolf House ruins.
I would rather be ashes than dust. I would rather that my spark should burn out in a brilliant blaze than it should be stifled by dry rot.
A close friend, George Sterling, said of Jack, "His greatness will surge triumphantly above race and time." Jack London's grave is now a shrine visited by admirers from all around the world. Charmian London began construction on the House of Happy Walls in 1919, just 3 years after Jack's untimely death. Financial hardships prolonged construction. Charmian employed Harry Merritt, a local architect, to design the house. It echoed many of the same features as Wolf House, their dream home that was destroyed by fire in 1913. It was built on a smaller scale with local stone and timber, and featured views of their beloved Valley of the Moon. South Sea architecture and artifacts were reflected in the home's design. Furnishings included artifacts collected during their Pacific voyage on the Snark, a 43-foot ketch that the Londons built. The Snark's anchor lantern was hung under the port cochere at the entrance. Mattresses from the ship's cabin were placed upstairs in window seats. The design of the dining room table and chairs was copied from a South Pacific wood carving. Tapa cloth, made from the bark of mulberry trees, was framed for use in privacy screens around Charmian's sleeping platform. Woven mats were hung on walls and decorated with fish spears. Carved wooden king posts guarded window seats downstairs and at the top of the stairway. Woodwork trimmed upstairs doorways, and wooden food bowls were converted into light fixtures. Charmian primarily lived here from 1935 to 1945. She greeted visitors downstairs in the vast open room with its deep window seats. Her privacy was preserved in the upstairs rooms. She led a busy life promoting Jack's legacy, traveling overseas and to Hollywood. In one room, she sorted through newspaper clippings and assembled their large collection of photographs into scrapbooks. Her dressing room contained her wardrobe and jewelry. A small kitchen beyond was where Charmian prepared quick meals when she ate alone, although often she would join her ranch guests for meals at the cottage, the London's Beauty Ranch home. She brought her Steinway piano from the cottage to the house and moved it upstairs with her cabinet of musical scores. After her death in 1955, the family honored her request to make the property a museum. The House of Happy Walls was opened as part of Jack London State Historic Park in 1960.